Hello.
That's usually like my opening.
Well, our personalities are so egregiously similar that people aren't going to know who's talking.
And so are our glasses.
I
I
know.
record the minute someone comes on, and usually everybody's like so disconcerted, but you're like, hey.
Hey, I'm ready.
So we're
I'm
getting
so excited.
started.
Yes, I'm so freaking ready and so happy to see your face on here.
Happy to see you. So I was prepping and I was like, oh, I'm just gonna go and write down all the posts that I've flagged, which
I
is
love
so many. I like save so many of your posts. And then I like my age just really came up because I don't know how to find.
the same. Oh, I can literally tell you how to do that if you want.
Well,
I'm like not that good myself, but it's
well,
fun.
you're an Instagram phenomenon, in my opinion. But then I was like, well, maybe I shouldn't be so prepped for this conversation. Maybe I should just
We
let it
whatever the
happen.
heck you want. This is your world. I'm honored to be joining it. So however you want things to go, I'm completely into.
My friend Taylor once came on the screen and she had such good lighting that I was like, I should have good lighting.
Ooh, beautiful. I
Mm.
actually just got podcasting equipment, but I didn't set it up yet.
Are you starting a
But
podcast?
next month, I'm very, very nervous about it and very excited about it. Yes, I'm very, very
World needs
excited.
your podcast.
But the
Because
sound, sorry, what did you say? I
the
didn't hear.
world needs your podcast terribly.
Oh, yeah, I'm excited.
Terribly.
Thank you very much. Yours too, but more. I usually put headphones in when I go on podcasts, but I've been hearing back from it's worse, usually
The
the sound.
worst.
So I'm just gonna
I was so again, just to show my age, I was on a podcast with these like young kids. No one was wearing earphones. And I was like, first of all, it looks terrible.
I
Second
know
of all, it looks terrible.
your hair is
I
too
really,
beautiful to be held back by big headphones too.
really
You have gorgeous
appreciate it.
hair.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. So here's my question. And then
Yeah.
I don't think I'm gonna have to ask one more question after this one.
Millions. Go.
How how are you so awesome? Like, but actually, like, how are you such an awesome, like, middle path nutritionist? Because you're really hard to find. And at your age, young like, you're just like, I'm just obsessed. And like, how did you become like Michelle
Um,
Obama? How did you become?
I don't know. I have very hard time accepting compliments, so thank you. But
Welcome.
um,
I don't
I,
give
I was.
compliments so readily. So
I think it's going to be the same answer you have for yourself. Just like you have a lot of trauma, and then you learn to see perspectives that are abundant all around you. I think that's really it. I have always been since I'm a kid, though, a very strong in my opinions, anti-bully person. So I'm always like I'm very harsh on people who are harsh on other people, and very vocal about that. And
I have
that
the chills all over my body.
usually leaves you right in the middle between. So I'm very anti-bully and also very outgoing and very willing to be that way. But also when you have had a lot vast traumatic experiences, you learn to see things from all these different perspectives. So for those reasons, I'm grateful
Or you learn to go
not
really
exactly right. You learn to
the
crumble
entire industry's fucking problem.
exactly.
But your experience of your trauma is to be a balanced, open-minded, looking at both sides person.
Yeah, I think also, we always treat what we've had, and I know you're the same way too, where you at some point when you're dealing with chronic illness and you're dealing with these, deep emotional stuff and everything, you just don't, you leave yourself. And I know for myself, like I leave myself at a point where I don't have an option to judge other people. And when you get to that point, I feel like it's very obvious to see when other people are speaking from a place of ego or a place of non-compassion because of usually, like you said, their own trauma or whatever it is. And it's what is obvious and left over is that, real compassionate state, which is when we all fall in the same place and we all have the same exact ideas.
Gosh, it's like, it's so interesting what you're saying, because I really, with the people I really love and trust on the show, I always like to get into this conversation about, well, how do I find someone to help me who I know will help me? Because, and I tell this story over and over because I just still can't believe it happened that, this weight loss coach posts, the common denominator in every diet that you've done is it's you. So you're the problem. And I really can't, I don't know if there's a day I can stop telling that story because then I think I'm probably complicit, but that's just a person who hasn't done their work.
Absolutely.
Person who isn't trained, this person, I guess, who thinks that that's a way to motivate people, or someone who's really into the sales funnel, I guess. But I think
It's
as you're saying it, it's like, well, someone who has a really balanced idea of things, which is if somebody says there's one way, run away, there's a lot of data that supports a lot of things. Let's sort of get to the bottom of that. But how did you, so wait, are you like open to like telling us a little bit about your story?
yeah, 100%.
Because
And
ever
I'll
since
tell
you
you,
posted that weight release little meme that you did,
yeah,
also like, I know I said this in the intro, but like Michelle's Instagram is just like I hate Instagram, but I like love Michelle's Instagram.
I love yours too. I
I
really,
just like fire up. I usually like, I'm like, praise, preach. It's like all I ever write to you. You're like, oh, there's my fan. There
I
she is.
have
There's
there's
my
no, but
stalker. There she
I am
is.
your fan too. So it's extremely equal. And I think that you feel the same way I do when I look at content like yours, which is I use this phrase and it's so like silly and basic, but point being, just be a normal person. Like when people are just be a normal person. You'll come up with the same nutrition information. You'll come up with the same coaching and counseling style. And I have huge issues with coaches and like again, I'm always down to be the anti-bully person because I'm really really tough, like you know, New York,
Yeah,
like
you
intense
are. You're
teams,
Strong
like
Island. You're Strong
you
Island
know,
strong.
oh my
My
God, we
best
keep
friend's Strong
going
Island
from
strong.
Queens.
We don't even mess with you. We don't mess with the
Exactly.
516, you know? By the
I'm
way,
such
she didn't even tell me she's from Long Island, and I just know. I just
exactly.
know
I
when
know
I'm
you're Westchester, which is it's still New York, but it's not as yeah. No,
I'm
I'm five
also like Hartwich, so that's the other thing.
only part. That's not enough. That's not enough. I think that what I notice so much in the messaging on Instagram too, which I'm glad that you're even talking about. Forget about my Instagram in general.
Hmm.
Is that we know that people use in their sales strategies like guerrilla warfare that's completely psychological, targeting people's pain points to get them to buy their services, which to me is like the fact that healthcare is a business, I guess I have to get behind because I have a business in healthcare, I understand. But the
Yes.
tactics used are so frightening to me. And the fact the consumer doesn't know that, which is why I'm very willing to always blow the lid off, you know,
I
on
think I also wonder if the consumer knows it and just is so desperate
I know that makes me sad.
for weight loss
Yeah.
that which makes me want to weep, is so desperate for weight loss that they kind of like just, you know, they're just complicit. They're like, fine, if, you know, they're promising me 10 pounds in 10 days. There's I like the dissonance of it, right? It's the
Yeah.
easiest thing to believe that. It's the hardest thing to believe
That it's a
that you can't
complex.
be helped.
Exactly. It's and also that you would only be able to be helped when you were ready to be helped. That's a really scary thing too, that someone can't you can't outsource your power to your health, which is a really appealing thing. Like same
Yeah.
thing with like cults or anything like that, which I'm like
Power
very
up. Right.
cult.
Well, I actually think much of this is culty because,
It is same language.
well, yeah, because I'm in 12 step and they sometimes call that a cult, but there's a couple of things that it's not because it doesn't demand that you pay them money. A lot of these things do, right?
I
That's
can't
a
believe
big one though.
so I have my sister is a psychologist and my cousin is a guidance counselor social worker and my other cousin's a social worker. So all of us were literally just talking about I was defending 12 steps. I'm like, no, I actually don't think it's a cult. And here's my list of
Ah,
reasons why.
there's actually, I forget the 4 reasons. So there's 4
Right.
things that make up a cult.
Exactly.
One of the things is it requires that you give it money.
Exactly.
There's
I think
there really, it's not. It sometimes feels that way.
there's
You
like
know,
an emotional commitment and you could obviously be eliminated from it, which can you can be shunned kind of sensation. There's components, but I just feel like my clients who are in 12 step programs at the same time have such a self-awareness that's so profound that I don't know. I still
well, and
love
everything's flawed, right? Because I've seen, I mean, and I even had a friend of mine who came on the show who is in like the most beautiful eating disorder recovery
wonderful.
of the most impossible kind. Like you just never thought she would get it. Like she would say that, Ashley. And she was like, yeah, I had to like get out of 12 step because I was like, they were vultures to me. And I was like, see, like that, but that's life.
That's her real experience. I mean, that's no one's taking away from that real
Right. And then
experience.
the next week I have my friend Michelle on who's like 12 steps saved my life. I mean, this is sort of where like what you're saying about like giving away your power. It's like, and sometimes it, you know, and then there's times in my career in 12 steps, like sometimes it's really like my primary thing. And sometimes I'm like into Kabbalah and sometimes I'm like on shamanic journeying and sometimes I'm just like
Are
playing with
real.
my dog
We're
and
witching. Exactly. I
sometimes just
think this is actually something that I'm so glad you're bringing up, because what the diet is, or whatever you're being sold is much less important than how you're interacting with it. I mean, this does not go for like real cults that are, hijacking and kidnapping you, and you're having like, a dangerous situation.
Texas. Yeah,
But,
yeah.
yeah, exactly. But the idea that someone could actually do something like a fad diet and actually gain success if it's on their own terms and in a way that's safe to them. It's much less about the content of these diets oftentimes, even though I, of course, have nutritional science issues with, a lot of these diets, but it's much more about, is someone else telling you to do this and telling you you're not okay if you don't do this, or is it a choice that you're making for yourself?
Oh my God. Wait. And telling you you're not okay if you're not doing it.
100%.
Yeah. I just that's the whole, because even in the food addiction world, which I am like on the outskirts, I'm like the bastard child of everywhere I go. I'm not quite
why we're here.
I'm not quite intuitive eating.
Yeah, which we can talk about too, for sure. I'm, as we know, we're both militant middle ground,
Militant middle, I think we should start. I am militant middle ground. Can I have this woman in the Facebook group is like talking about some like pasta? I don't know. She's like, is this allowed? And I was like, well, I don't know what it is. And then she explained to me what it was, those miracle noodles, which I have a lot of my own personal issues with, whatever. And this is what I wrote back. I was like, I don't know, try it. See if it triggers you. Get back to me.
100%. I have no idea.
Any other food addiction group, everybody's hair would have been on fire. I'm like, 100%. Keep me updated.
Because you're not the boss of their bodies. And that is scary to coaches, and it's scary to people. It's definitely more appealing, I would think, even, for us, to go to someone and say, tell me what to do. It's more appealing to have someone tell you what to do, but ultimately not as effective and really not as safe, because you sacrifice a lot when you sacrifice that power outwards.
Well, here's the issue. And this is what I want to know about you. Curiosity, but also validation for the audience. But so a lot of my thought on intuitive eating personally, and then like anecdotally, what I've seen in my life is that it does work for restrictive people. Like people have restricted for a really, really long time. And like a sort of like, like relinquishing control, introducing foods, whatever. I have very rarely seen it. Well, I guess what does work mean? But I've never seen it work as a function for weight release. And I've never seen it work as a function of optimal health and even optimal brain health because of the endocrine system, period.
Yep.
So, but I think there is a piece of our vulnerability when we are holding weight that we know shouldn't be on our body, that does allow for us. And I know this for me because I've fired 10 million nutritionists who are taking it too slowly, or were telling me I could eat what I wanted. Like I just wanted to, I can get pretty violent in my unhealed self. And I would just want to like strangle their necks and be like, you skinny little bitch. I am 300 pounds. Stop telling me to work on my sleep. Now, years later, I understand what they meant in their own way. But I wonder about that part of, because as I train people, I sometimes say to the coaches and therapists that I train, which is, there's days in which you have to be louder than the addiction. Like there's days in which you can't tell anybody or teach anybody, but sometimes you have to kind of scream it out loud, get a little bit in their face about it. In DBT, we say, you pull them off the ledge, you apologize later.
Yeah.
That's
a little more force.
But as someone who has, as you wrote in this post, really quiet post, I watch your posts like people watch the stock market. You say this thing where you're like, yeah, I used to be really overweight. I did it in a really unhealthy way, so I don't talk about it. But I actually think it's an interesting thing because I imagine it really informs who you are today. Like, can you talk to us a little bit about that story?
100%. Yeah. And the one, I mean, there's about 45 things I have to say about literally the last 2 minutes, because
maybe we should just have a podcast together.
I think we need a podcast together. I think we need one.
Therapist and the nutritionist.
I'm in. Yes.
So
the one thing about intuitive eating, and there's kind of a process with intuitive eating and health changes. Oftentimes we view intuitive eating as the one stop on the train.
Well, intuitive eating views itself that way, Michelle. Like Dude, I had Elise Reich on my show, and she's just like, I don't believe in food addiction.
Yeah.
I believe that the intuition can override any biological urge. I said, what about big food? What about the billion? She said, nope. Intuition can always do better.
I was wondering if the intuitive eating crew, and not naming specific names, are like in bed with big food, because they are the best promoters of their craft. That's my big joke of life, is I'm like, who are you helping besides those companies when you do that? But that's a whole other huge conversation to have too.
That's like its own podcast.
It's
Well, because like, were you the one who posted? No, my other friend Molly and Clarissa posted that like all the funding of nutrition is funded by big food.
Oh no, that was me.
It's like everybody, but everybody should know that listening. Like, when we're talking about data and nutrition, like so much of it is funded by big food. Like we have to be thoughtful about that.
I have major gripes. I'm a functional dietitian, which is like very different than a conventional dietitian. I have major gripes with our dietetic schooling. So, and I'll talk about what a functional dietitian is too, right, and what the difference is between conventional and functional. I will also say about intuitive eating, and this is something I don't want to miss that you said, because I will talk about my own weight loss journey too. And why I don't talk about it and why I do talk about it sometimes and selectively. So if someone is occupying a 300-pound body, the imminency and urgency for them to lose weight is much greater than someone who might have a disordered relationship with food, but might not have societal issues with their weight. Forget about the physical issues, societal issues with their weight, issues with connection with people, because one thing that's absolutely acknowledged in intuitive eating and body positivity is that people are discriminated against for their size. Right. That could have disastrous mental and physical health consequences just from the lack of social connection, right? And those things. So regardless,
even if it's internal, right? Even if it's your perception of the world, it's still damaging.
And it's not even your perception of the world, because someone who has a disordered relationship with food at 150 pounds, let's just say, I'm just choosing an arbitrary number, versus someone who has a disordered relationship with food at 300 pounds has different priorities, most likely. And their relationship with food may be extremely important, or their physicality might be extremely important, or their social connections, their ability to get a job. I mean, studies consistently show that people who occupy larger bodies, especially women who occupy larger bodies, are less likely to get job promotions, get picked for a job in the first place. There are legitimate societal consequences. Same thing with dating and all of that. I think it's incorrect and horrible that the world exists like this, but let's be real about what the world really is. And it's, would I change it in a second and make people normal? Yes. But when we can't do that, if someone is being held back from a physical, emotional, spiritual way by their weight, and they want to address it, it's on them and their priority and timeline and urgency to address it. So I think that one part of body positivity that strikes and rubs people wrongly is the idea that you can't lose weight. You have to focus on your relationship with food, and losing weight is actually like a negative thing, and there's no health consequences of holding extra weight. I think the premise behind body positivity is 100% right, and it's a knee-jerk reaction to all this weight bias. But I think that the overcompensation is what is incorrect and rubs us wrong.
I think I think the way it goes all the way is a trauma response, period.
I agree too. And you know what? It's valid trauma. I think that
trauma, the response of it being non-inclusive to people who want to shift their body is, it's like just so.
And you're still telling someone what they want, right? That's my issue with it. So you're still telling someone, if you're giving someone a playbook and telling them they can only play by your playbook, you're still taking their power away from them. And that's my big issue with all of this too, is that I want people to say, hey, I would like to lose weight and repair my relationship with food, or I would just like to repair my relationship with food, or I would just like to lose weight. And yes, sometimes as coaches, like you said, sometimes you have to be a voice for someone and say, hey, I'm hearing that you're really not ready to do the food stuff yet. I'm hearing that you're really still in the trenches. Can I pitch to you that we start focusing on the relationship with food first? But I'm not forgetting how important it is to you to lose weight. And can we address that urgency?
Where were you? Before
we would have been a great fit. Be working with you too, all of us together. So, and now I will, if you want me to, I will tell
because I have to say, I think there are really gifted people out there, but I think people who can really, I think there's just an extra bonus for those of us that understand what it's like to be in a big body. I mean, I'm sitting in a 325-pound body, and I'm like, this is not the body I'm supposed to be in. Number one, because it's not. Number two, what I'm doing to it is suicidal how I
Absolutely.
am treating it.
Absolutely. And it was for you and for me certainly indicative of other things that were going on with us. And sometimes it's literally not. And sometimes, people are carrying extra weight, whatever, it's their body shape. And it's not
Oh,
for me to judge or
1000%.
care. Live your life. I don't care.
I mean, also, yeah,
I
I
don't
mean,
give any
I say
advice.
all the time, like someone's listening to you and me being like, no, it's like, there's so many good podcasts that got released today. Like, go listen to them. We're not for you. That's okay.
Absolutely.
I
And
hope, but I hope we're resonating because I'm obsessed with
I
us.
know we hope you're feeling us because we're feeling you.
You hope you're feeling us because we're feeling.
We're feeling you too. I would say that again, also, so my story is I grew up in Queens, like super diverse, amazing. Like I'm a New York City person. And where I grew up was very diverse of thought, body, race, like anything you can imagine. Like my high school, I think my high school is actually the most diverse high school in the entire world. I've never said that on a podcast, which is so freaking cool because Flushing, Queens is the most diverse place in the entire world. So
Yeah, it is.
it was really a thing growing up that like being unique was an asset versus I know in like suburban high schools, like
Yeah,
that's
like in my
definitely
high school where I was where me and Linda were the only two fat people. Yeah, you got it.
you and Linda. Oh my goodness. Yes, exactly. That was not the case. And although I felt limited in some ways by my size because I had always occupied a larger body growing up. There was never a time from the age of like maybe 4 that I hadn't. And that was due to honestly, my mom just like didn't food shop. Love you, Joyce, but my mom didn't food shop. There wasn't so much food available in ways of like, fresher food. We ate out a lot and stuff like that. So I just kind of started off in a larger body and then added up and then had emotional stuff like everyone else does growing up. And it really compounded for me. So I was like, class clown in my high school. I had like amazing grades, amazing friends. Like I had a really good life up until that point. And then, and not saying it got bad, but so to speak, when I knew I was going to the University of Delaware for college, and Delaware is like super homogenous. That school is like very isolated, non-diverse compared to New York City, obviously. And I'm not saying, anything bad about Delaware, but that university compared to my upbringing was super like reverse culture shock. I was like, oh, I'm going to go to this school and people are not going to know, like, I'm Michelle Shapiro, the funny, cool, like good grades, like friends with everybody person. I'm going to go to this school and they're going to be like, oh, Michelle Shapiro is fat. And I'm not, that's what their first initial perception of me is going to be. And that was true. That would have been true. So I basically went on, and this is where I'm going to issue a trigger warning, like a really,
I don't issue trigger warnings.
oh,
I know why? Because I do not believe my listener is fragile.
I don't believe it is either.
I don't believe in fragilizing people. Take a breath. If it feels triggering, stop listening and listen later.
So no issue, no trigger warning issued. However, if you do feel that way, stop listening. I'm with that. So I went on a drastic weight loss journey going into college and lost like 100 pounds in 3 months. So it was like vicious.
Wow. Yeah, that's like there's no healthy way to do that. Like I had bariatric surgery and I didn't even lose it that quickly.
Exactly. So I just basically, I'm the type of person where if I say I'm going to do something, like I'm going to do it. So I do things too hard sometimes because I'm like, I'm very
Can't
focused.
even believe you're breathing from 300 pounds.
Well, I wasn't. That's what happened. Well, I wasn't basically. So that's and ultimately what leads me to here is that I literally almost wasn't breathing because from that, all of college, I was suffering with debilitating panic attacks, debilitating medical issues, pain all over my body. I mean, panic attacks that were like 8 or 9 times a day, vomiting, like really intense, nonstop. I can't even count how many doctors I went to. And of course they were just like, maybe you should lose a little more weight. And I'm like, yes, my body's in like a horrible state of imbalance and like homeostatic dysfunction.
Doctors are so untrained sometimes,
We're always, but yes. So in that, when I was in college, again, I received so much external validation from dating prospects, from friends, from all these people who I am certain, because they were rushing these sororities and stuff that were judging them. And they were like, what would be considered in my worldview, normal weighted or like underweighted. And they were like vicious to them. Like, cause they were like, again, on the like a normal sized person and they weren't underweight and they were judged. I am very aware that the friendships that I made, and I still have like most of my best friends are from college and, elementary school and like throughout my life, and I love them. But I'm aware that losing weight gave me legitimate societal advantages. And it has to be acknowledged that that happens. At the same time, my physicality deteriorated horribly. And the one thing that made me stop and kind of want to look at any of this and look at my disordered eating or anything like that was because of these panic attacks, because they're the suckiest thing in the entire world. So I was like,
You
I'll
feel
do
like you're
anything
dying. I mean,
to make
sure.
that. I thought I was
I
dying.
mean, and listen, we're shamanically like they're a wake up call.
100%. Yes, my body was screaming at the top of its lungs at me, please don't kill me, basically, is what my body was telling me. And I realized, you know, again, towards the end of college and even in my dietetic schooling, I would notice people were eating like a lot more than me. And I was like, oh, they're eating, and like a lot of dietitians have eating disorders, very disproportionate amount. But even in a disorder.
Like, how do we know? Like I agree with you, but like how, like that's the other piece that we have to like look at with when we're deciding to have somebody honor our path with us. It's like we don't even consider that. Well, maybe she's struck. I was just having this conversation with someone talking about her dad's therapist. And I said, sounds like your dad and her therapist have a really unhealthy relationship. That happens a lot in therapy. It sounds like she's really enmeshed with him. That happens a lot in therapy. She's like, it does? I was like, that's why you need to make sure your therapist's in therapy and your therapist is like, healers are humans. Like,
and there are people who usually want to heal what they've experienced, but you have to know what
they're experiencing so they don't have to look at themselves. You don't know.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Or, I mean, I know I went into dietetics in the first place because I was like, I want to be in some sort of service career, but I also wanted the secrets to weight loss. That was part of, you know, and I feel like a lot of dietitians, that does happen. And I feel like a lot of therapists might want to, I know there's actual studies with dietitians have a disproportionate rate of eating disorders compared to.
There is? How did they even do that study? Okay, that's another podcast, but that's
yeah, it's very fascinating. I will find it for you, and we can put it in the show notes or something too. But it's you're like, yeah, you're good. But I will say that probably for therapists, we treat what we're interested in or have experienced often, and that's usually an asset, like you said. Like, so my issue with always talking about me occupying a larger body has been the fact that I don't want to poach people's pain point in that and be like, I did it. So because I don't believe that my experience is anything I want my clients to have. I don't want them to do anything I did. I don't feel that losing weight is something that deserves a badge of honor because I don't want it to be attached to my morality as a person. I just believe that healing as a process is something to be very proud of, but weight loss as a parameter of morality or success is not something that I like to attach. So that's something that I'm very cautious of talking about because I don't want to poach people's emotions for that reason. So that's why I talk about it. But then I'm also like, hey, while I'm talking about it, I did it in a really crappy way. Don't be proud of me just yet. Basically, hear my story first.
Well, I'm proud of you. I mean, whatever, but like, I think it's like, I really believe like if we're really able to lean into the unfolding of our life exactly as it is supposed to be, it's like, that's why you're a balanced dietitian.
Totally.
And you had to dialectically understand what it is to not feel like you're in the right sized body, to understand. I mean, when I lost that weight, it was shocking to me how I was experienced different by society. I mean, it was traumatic, to be honest. It was so scary in its own way. I was like,
no one talks about that. And that's really powerful, Molly. And I definitely had a similar experience. Also, like, again, if it comes back to romantic relationships, like I would have I had a million friends who were guys and still do to this day. Like a person's a person. It doesn't matter what gender they are to be my friend. And some of those who like showed interest in me after I lost weight, it made me feel so crappy. And it made me feel like, you would think it makes you feel validated, but it made me feel like, wow, you just couldn't see me before, huh? You couldn't see me.
Tears in my eyes. Yeah. You know it. And I think the other one, which would be like, oh my God, you look so amazing now. Wow. And I'm like, how bad was it? Like I honestly, this is 20 years later. I'm like, could cry thinking about it. It's like, was I that bad before? Like it was, talk about morality and I'm very careful when people release weight. It's actually very common in AA. See, like this kid in AA transformed and I said, hey, you okay? You okay? you look good, but are you okay? He said, yeah, I'm great. I just started it. And I said, that's really wonderful that you decided to take care of yourself in a different way. It's really exciting that that's an added bonus of sobriety. But I mean, I've been a therapist for like 2 million years. Like I have the experience. I can't imagine
Of course, exactly. You
that
know
kind
exactly how to
of.
ask for consent. You know exactly how to check in first. Like it's right. This is
I
chump
didn't
change
think
for you,
of it that way.
but
Oh my God. Anytime anybody's like different looking, I'm like, are you healthy? Are you healthy? Did you do that healthfully? Do you want to talk about it?
beautiful. Yeah, and I think that for
These
like
people could be on cancer treatment for all I know. It's a quick way to lose weight. Go get chemo. Like,
I I prohibit in my family because also like Jewish family, like
Yeah.
New York, like obviously the talks around food and weight are bountiful. That was funny. That I just combined those two words. But I find that if I do have to set very legitimate boundaries with my own family and just be like, hey, I literally will not talk about weight at all. I don't even want you to tell me I look, I just don't care also if you think I look good or not,
God,
frankly.
I still care. I don't know. I still care. I still can get a little high off of somebody commenting on my body, except that I know in the long run, this is what I experienced. My best friend can't unsee my 325-pound self. So it doesn't matter if I'm on a 10, 15-pound ratio. She was like, you look too skinny. You look so skinny. You're too skinny. And finally, I'm like, stop commenting on my weight. Please stop commenting on my weight. But here's why. Because in the absence of her saying that, I couldn't form myself.
Yeah.
And so I was becoming like so reliant. And when she would say that, I would actually find myself eating food in an unhealthy way.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. And by the way,
What a
it's,
tangled web.
you know, it's okay, obviously, that you still have that experience. Like
It's
that's
funny. When I was in the shower this morning thinking about our interview, I wanted to pose that to you. I was interested in your thoughts on it because gosh, we just share a brain.
we do. We
I was
really,
thinking how I really, really love my body, but I love it how it is now. And I work on it. I do really not, I do very like exercise that I have to be strong for. And I see myself getting stronger. And I care that my stomach looks a certain way. And I'm okay with it. But I'm wondering how you are okay with it. And if you could explain it.
yeah,
Like, is it
totally.
okay to like want a different body to you?
I think it's totally okay to want a different version of your own body. I think it is. So I can really at this point separate, and this is like internal family systems, which I definitely want to talk about because it's so fun.
Okay.
I can separate who's the calls coming from inside the house of my body. So I can very easily say if someone is data driven and it's my real logical self, or if it's an old voice and habit. So basically, I would say it used to be that 500 times a day I would have someone saying like, you're really going to eat that? Like I have this whole, she's wearing a leather jacket, she smokes cigarettes, red lipstick. I got the whole vision for bitch Michelle. Like I know her very well. And I'm like, oh, you know, once in a while now, I would say if that used to happen 500 times a day, now I'll get one punch in the gut every 6 months. And it's like, you look like shit, you know,
Yep.
punch in the gut. And I'm like, oh, nice to see you, bitch. You know,
Right.
like that's like how, sorry, I just cursed so much on that, but that's how I'll know it's her and I can differentiate those voices really well.
You
So
know,
there's,
it's that. So for those that don't know, internal family systems is like part. So there's a part of Michelle, it's not who she is as a person. It's a part of Michelle who's up and loud and being like, oh, you're disgusting. Look at your belly, da, 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 look at all this stuff. Right. So that's one part of her. And she's able to identify that part and then not have to have it be her entire persona.
exactly. And all of those parts, part of internal family systems, all of those parts are protective and your
Yep.
friend. So we love all of them. They just have different experiences, but there is one true self, basically. So I can now respond when I hear, you know, we'll call it BM come out. I can respond immediately and be like, oh, hi, whoa, nice to see
Yeah.
you. I
What's going
accept
on
you.
there?
Oh,
Yeah.
that was, you know, I wonder where that's coming from, and kind of approach it with curiosity. But my voice is now always the loudest. So again, can I get beaten down by life and exhausted, and some of the other voices can pop up stronger? Yes, but I have that baseline logical voice, which is that for me, weight, I don't consider a diagnosis. I consider it a symptom. So like I had a huge mold exposure last year, and like during mold detox, you can retain a tremendous amount of fluid. And I was like, listen, me to BM and all other Michelles, like you're gonna probably gain weight during this detox, and like let's just rock out and just roll with it, and it'll come off, and it does. And or if it doesn't, it doesn't for some time, but like you got to get the mold out of your body because it's very important. So I think logical real me can view information and symptoms from the body as data, as opposed to a threat or promoting or feeling urgency.
I think that takes practice.
Practice, that's all it is. And anyone can do it. Anyone can do it and learn
I had
those.
this Buddhist meditation teacher on the podcast. I just did my entry with him yesterday, and we were talking so much about like detachment and all this stuff. And I said to him, like, yeah, but what if I am very attached to losing 100 pounds because I'm in a 300-pound body? And he said something so interesting that I'd never really encapsulated, which he said, as long as it's about process, not outcome, then it's healthy, right? Which made so much sense to me personally.
From the outcome. I like that. That's really powerful.
As long as it's about process and what that meant to me was like in my own process, like in the beginning, it was like I was gaining weight hand over fist. I was binging my brains out. I got caught throwing up at work. Like this thing was off its rails, like this thing was off its rails. And so in the beginning, it was like, this is my experience. I was just like, I got to get some semblance of a foundation of something, right? And I need to get this weight off. And I did it healthfully. And I saw a nutritionist that I finally didn't kill. And I went to a lot of like 12-step meetings, and I came off sugar and flour, and I didn't eat dinner after 7. If my friends wanted to go to dinner, I had to say no. And I only really cared about releasing the weight at that time because that was the main threat to me. But about 3 years in, a day occurred to me that it was like, you know what? Eating this organic apple is healthier for my body. And this fuel, it might matter, the fuel that it did 3 years. And like an eating disorders therapist.
Yeah. And
then slowly, but so my motive really evolved over time, but like with healthy behavior, that motive like evolved.
Well, that's really an extremely important point, because the piece of intuitive eating that was missing for you, or would have been missing for you and is missing for other people, is that the actual foods we consume can create those little voices in our head. They can create cravings. The feedback system is not just from your brain down, it's from your body up. And we know that's the truth.
Unpack that into its minute.
So, especially when you talk about hyper palatable foods, like highly processed foods, like understand that like big food companies attach electrodes to people's brains, and they can predict like how often you will return to eat a food based on the like neurological response that you have.
Like a Dorito.
Yeah, like a Dorito. Like I always think about Oreos are like always vilified, and not for any reason besides the fact that they just are an easy one to pick out that everyone knows basically. But yes, like those kind of companies, they literally will do that. So they can make like predictive behavior, like predictive, like an analytics about your behaviors based on what chemicals they're putting in the food. So the foods you eat are able to override your mental processes and your decision-making ability. So I find that eating purely intuitively, and by the way, when I say intuitive eating, I need to specify, I'm talking about the real, 10 principles of intuitive eating, and not how people are like, I can eat whatever I want. That's not intuitive eating, and we know that.
It's before I get to this question though.
Exactly. Like it's a verified system. And the principle.
Michelle, the other thing is the book Intuitive Eating, the last chapter is all about that you can't emotionally eat in intuitive eating. And it makes my head want to fall off.
Yeah, that's very interesting.
Because I don't understand how we're supposed to differentiate between what's intuitive and what's emotion. I know that maybe I can, if I'm not on sugar and flour, and I've been a hardcore transcendental meditator for 9 years.
So cool. Yeah, exactly.
And even then I could probably make a case that it's intuitive just because I fucking want it.
Exactly. Right. Like, sometimes, BM and Michelle can have a little chat too. Sometimes it is a different voice, and it's very hard to differentiate. It's also like, this is such an interesting, powerful thing. Like, so if I eat gluten, I don't get any stomach problems whatsoever, but 24 hours later, I'll have existential crises. So I'll be like, why is the earth round? And I'm like, this thing. And it is so predictable. Like it is so every single time I will literally look at my husband and be like, did we get what sushi did we have yesterday? Because I'm like, was there a spicy tuna situation that there was a little soy sauce in there or something? Like the more in tune you are with your body, the more aware you are of how each thing that
I'm that way with American cheese. I still eat it, but I'm that way with American cheese.
My obsession.
I like it.
I love
What?
that. I haven't eaten dairy in a while because I just don't do well digestively with dairy, but I was obsessed with American cheese as a child and have a lot of
Me
emotional
too.
relations.
I think I eat it simply because I wasn't allowed to eat it, but I eat like organic and I'm still like, it's still, and I just, here
And
we
we know, of course, there was a merit to removing food restrictions for freedom of thought and for so you don't binge on those specific foods. There's definitely science there. The
are.
question is, what else is there science for? Because if you just limit yourself to that knowledge, how are you going to achieve the rest of your health goals? And I don't, this is one thing, I don't know that you can intuitively eat hyperpalatable foods if they hijack your biology. Because I don't know if you're then operating again, are you
What do
operating?
you mean you don't know?
I think
You think,
I think after a long time, you could sprinkle it in once in a while, but
but
when you're
that's different. That's what you and I are talking about here. You're
totally,
saying if I eat gluten, I know that I'm going to
yeah,
have a reaction to it. I'm saying if I eat Doritos with my godson, which I sometimes do, I absolutely know I'm going to have cravings. I'm going to be tired. I'm going to want like I know what I'm doing.
yep, totally. So does it, the answer is, does it hijack your biology 100% of the time? Yes. Do you have more control during certain times in your life to deal with that hijack? Yes. And that's the answer.
Practice, yes.
So, but I also believe, and this is my huge issue with intuitive eating and the body positivity movement, even though I think the morality principles behind it are rock
No,
solid. And I'm like,
me
let's
too.
go.
Me
Let's
too.
try
And
to
I'm
punch.
excited by them because I couldn't even find a prom dress when I was trying to go to prom. I love it. I love the different bodies. I love that people are loving their bodies. I love it. I love it. I love it.
And it's correct. People should,
Correct.
or
Except for when
humans,
it
they should
goes
be
too far.
respected in anybody. It's like laughable. Like, oh yes, people should be respected in everybody and not treated differently based on the way that they look. Interesting. Like, wow.
Right.
The fact that it's novel is the funny part, and not because of the movement, because of people who are against the movement too. But I think that, again, the missing component, again, in the 10 steps of intuitive eating, there's one for nutrition. And that's my other huge gripe, is that you are a therapist. I'm a dietitian. I'm a nutrition expert. I'm not a therapist. And I almost feel like intuitive eating is a mental model, a psychological solution for a physical issue sometimes.
So interesting.
And I don't know that dietitians are in scope to only be administering psychological solutions to physical problems. I always question that.
Well, what about this one? My friend sent it to me on Instagram. It was this, and listen, whatever, send me hate mail. That means you
Yeah,
love
we're gonna get crushed for this.
no one listens. No, send me hate mail. I'm here for it. It's very, very thin nutritionist sitting on her counter with gummy watermelons, eating them with like reckless abandon, throwing them down, saying, sugar isn't addictive. I can eat as many of these as I want. I'm enraged by this. I don't understand. Can you here's the only thing I understand about it, which is what an easy sell.
Yep.
To shame somebody, to all the amount I treat so many people that like want to believe that they can just casually eat gummy water. I want to believe I can casually eat gummy watermelons. I can't. I don't know the price I'd have to pay. It's not even worth it to me at this point. But I don't understand why we need to make that argument. Can't we just make the argument that some people can casually eat gummy watermelons and some people can't? Like, what is going on there in the nutrition world? Why do we feel like we have to say to people, you're not allowed to want to remove gummy watermelons from your diet? I mean, if that's what she's saying, is there something wrong with you that you can't do this?
Yeah.
Victim shaming.
I have a million issues with those kind of I call them the all foods fit posts.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. Be a person who has like severe gut issues, like most of my clients do, severe anxiety issues, severe physicality issues, and then look at them in the face and say that. That's what I'm like. It's nice to say.
I think she would.
Right. I think.
You know what else? I think that people are vulnerable enough that they'd see her till the day they die trying to do that.
It's a really easy sell. It's a cozy. I have a model that I use, which is like the difference between coddling and compassion. And coddling sells like freaking crazy.
That's why I don't do trigger warnings on my show. I ain't coddling anyone.
Exactly. And
let's have a therapy session about it. Let's talk about what's triggering you so that you can be less vulnerable in this world. Tough world out there.
I always say that intuitive eating is a privilege for those who don't have chronic illness, because It can't
Okay.
be the priority if you're a sick person. It
So
just, it's usually not. Your relationship with food is usually
what
not.
about it? But what about this? Like, what if you're just what if you're like someone who's like, when I put it into my body, my endocrine system acts up in a way where I want more. I go into like my insulin receptors ain't so good anymore. I've wrecked them out by years and years of binging. And like, I don't want to eat sugar anymore. Like, isn't that a privilege you're allowed to take too? Or no?
I would say that that's not a privilege. I'd say it's even the opposite. It's you don't have a freaking choice at that point or you're going to be sick. So I would say that being able to focus on intuitive eating as a first line of defense is a privilege for people who aren't sick.
That you have to check off, oh, I don't have endocrine issues. Oh, I don't have celiac stuff. Oh, I don't have a leaky gut. Like that you check off I agree with that wholeheartedly.
Yeah,
I agree with
you
that
can't,
wholeheartedly.
like, I have
It's a
clients
really great way to look at it.
and
I just don't like to think of it like as a privilege.
no,
I don't think it's a great
look at it.
endpoint necessarily for a lot of people.
I think it's accessible in a good way for a lot of people, which I do like programs that are accessible. I like that you can, there's merit, and obviously there's merit and there's studies behind this. I completely believe in the frame of it. What we are talking about and agreeing on literally every single point is the timeline and the urgency behind using the principles versus another maybe physical solution.
I feel like we need to read the principles on the show. I'll get it up on my phone.
Yeah, pull it up. Sure.
Because I think we're losing something in the conversation. 10 principles.
Add more because we're freaking killing it. I think.
I think I just want to talk to you all day. Okay. 10 principles of intuitive eating. Here we go. Are we ready?
Yes.
God bless the telephone. Reject the diet mentality. Here for that. Are you here for that? I am here for that. I am a food addiction therapist. Here for that. Honor your hunger. Here for that. I don't know. I'm sort of there for that. Wait, can we talk about that one?
So that's more about, so they do have.
Oh, yeah. Keep your body biologically fed with adequate energy and carbohydrates. I agree. Otherwise, you can trigger a primal drive. I agree.
Yeah.
Once you reach the moment of excessive hunger, all intentions, yes, are irrelevant. Agree. But I believe in meal regulation to train yourself to do that because that's what the data says to me. The data says and by the way, even if you go inpatient for anorexia, they teach you meal regulation.
We could talk about the inpatient for anorexia.
I mean, I could talk about that.
Exactly. If we ever wanted to, we could talk about that too. But I would say, yeah, I mean, honoring your hunger is also, it's again, these principles are, they are much more in depth, obviously, in the book. They're obviously more in depth.
I love all of it. Make peace with food. I agree. Challenge the food police. I agree. Discover the satisfaction factor. Hard to do, but I agree.
Yeah, of course. You want to feel
maybe in 5 years, I could do that when I was starting. Feel your fullness. I agree. Sure. Cope with your emotions with kindness. I agree. Respect your body. 1,000% agree.
Perfect principles.
Feel the difference. No militant exercise. Agree wholeheartedly. Honor your health. Gentle nutrition. Is that the one?
Yes. Well, gentle nutrition is like the last principle, and it's a bunch of dietitians who are doing this. So that's my concern too. And what constitutes gentle nutrition is also, I always love that it's like literally the, rock bottom last principle. I do, again, as we've said, body positivity is morally correct. Done. Intuitive eating is scientifically correct. Every single thing that you just said rocks.
I agree wholeheartedly.
Scientifically, yes. The question is it the exclusive application of your health goals? And are you doing it in a timeline that's appropriate for the client's needs? And are you ignoring the rest of their needs by putting these principles
with your doctrine that this is the only way?
Exactly. Yes. So I have a lot of clients who have done intuitive eating. They loved it. They worked with a health at every size practitioner. They had a really good experience. But what happened was their chronic illness, whether it was digestive issues, anxiety, weight gain, something like that. And the diabetes is a really specifically interesting one because there's a tight timeline that once your A1C goes in that 5.8-ish range, things can really kind of like a boulder rolling down. They can go really quick. So you kind of, again, there's priorities for everyone's health, and determining that is the magic and sauce of counseling. Here's
the other thing, like the percentage of America that has type 1, type 2 diabetes plus metabolic syndrome.
Exactly. Well,
I think metabolic syndrome is probably the most undiagnosed,
right,
and underdiagnosed given what we were talking about at the beginning, given what even the health guidelines are now, because the A1, okay, A1C has moved up since America has gotten so much sicker. So it's like,
Yes. It's the new normal, we'll call it.
Explain to me what a holistic nutritionist is.
Absolutely.
And like,
yeah.
I read you have like one slot open, which is just heart. You're like, come coach with me. I have one position. I was like, I mean, what am I even supposed to do here? What am I even supposed to do with my girl?
I have a new dietitian coming on my staff who's been trained by me, and she's so fantastic. And she's coming in January, and her spots are wide freaking open because she didn't.
Well, maybe I'll have her on my show.
She's amazing. She is amazing.
I don't think you hire I don't hire anybody I wouldn't see myself. She's
the first dietitian that I'm hiring to see clients in my almost 9 years in business. So yes, it means very, very much she is the real freaking deal. And I cannot wait. So yes, we were going to have so many spots and she's going to get right to work. So I'm so excited. Let's use the word holistic is fantastic. I use the word functional as
functional. Sorry. No, you're right.
Oh, don't worry. Please. I'm also a holistic dietitian too. So I'm all those things. So functional means we treat the root cause of things, right? And you've probably heard this before. It's like, I'll give an example. So in ways of a functional medicine doctor, what you would expect is if you went to a conventional doctor and your thyroid was low, they would give you pig thyroid hormone. So they would say, here's, that's what thyroid hormone's usually made from pig thyroid. Here, take this levothyroxine and let's replace the thyroid that you need. If you went to a functional medicine doctor, they would say, why isn't your thyroid working? I don't understand. Let's give your thyroid what it needs to function on its own. So the goal is always to find the real reason. I use the phrase, what's really happening here, to find the root cause of what's actually happening with someone and then support their own body in healing. And it could be a combination of, in the case of a doctor's office, medications as well, or it could be a combination of supplements, nutrition, lifestyle changes. A really good example of a functional dietitian's work is if someone had like blood sugar issues, you would go to a conventional dietitian and they would say, well, don't eat too many carbs because the carbs are going to make your blood sugar go up. Right. Well, I'm a functional dietitian. So I'd say, well, why isn't your insulin functioning well? And then we can use food and supplements to actually make your insulin function better. So we treat the system as opposed to
what do you prescribe?
There's different herbs that you can use. There's nutrient timing you can use. There's a bunch of different stuff for insulin resistance specifically. You also, the disease process of insulin resistance is driven by inflammation. So you have to treat the inflammation in the body also. So it's not, you take it even, you can always, the joke is you can always go another step back. There's always another route. And I have the biggest joke of all, which is that at the root cause of everything is trauma or mold. If you keep digging in every person, you're going to find the trauma and the mold is at the rootiest of all root causes.
Oh my God, that's amazing. I'm just starting to work with a company called Wild Health and I'm getting my...
Oh, they're fantastic.
I know, I'm getting my stuff back and I'm so excited about it because it's such an interesting
I'll look at
dialectic. What's that?
I'll look at your labs too if you want.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
I love in one spot left. It's a very exciting moment.
No, you don't count the spots.
14 years later, it's such an amazing thing of when you can really honor your own journey. 14 years into this, I'm so excited to learn how to feel better. Like I'm so open to possibility. When 14 years, like, I just need to lose this weight. I don't care. Stop telling me about my sleep. And now I'm like, wow, what am I going to learn about all of this? That's a beautiful way to treat a person. Do you do any groups?
So I have had
telling you, I want to just,
I've in the past done 2 group programs that I loved. It's just that launching them. Yeah. It's just hard launching them. Honestly, it's
like, got married. That wedding looked so fun.
It was very fun.
I wish I could rewind time and start our friendship 2 years ago.
I know. Should I just throw it again? Jeremy doesn't have to come. It was terrible. He hates
it. Okay, that's good.
It'll be our wedding, Molly. That's what we're gonna do.
That's it. So my friend Julie got married to herself. She's married. And she got married to herself. She bought herself a ring and she said to her husband, I just need you to know my relationship with myself is more important than our marriage. And I bought myself this ring. I was get it.
And everyone deserves beautiful rings. It's so wonderful. I also picked out my ring and then was like, to Jeremy at the time, I was like, oh dude, this is what we're doing. He was like, great. I'm not involved in this at all.
That's on brand for you. I see that.
I was like, hey, we're doing this. He's like, great, less work for me. Here we go. I have a program that's evergreen. So anyone can join. It's called Anxiety Proof.
Oh, tell us about that.
love Anxiety Proof. It's like my favorite thing I've ever made. I also have a program called Quiet the Diet, which is not being run right now, but my podcast that's coming out soon is also named Quiet the Diet, which is all about listening to yourself as opposed to following the advice of others and insourcing as opposed to outsourcing your power.
Yeah, we have the same podcast. Mine's about like what you're craving. Yeah, we have the same podcast.
We have the same personality, and
you're sort of the kind of person that makes me like myself more because you me so much of myself.
It's a mirror.
And I think you're so great. I'm like, well, I can't be that bad if I'm like her because she's so
very
amazing.
good. You're not that bad. You're very good.
Oh, so I love you. Where are all the places we can find you? Yes, and I'm having you on again. So
I'll be back. Anxiety Proof, you can go to www.getanxietyproof.com. It's the holistic functional nutrition approach to anxiety. I teamed up with my best friend who's a naturopathic physician. He is actually the president of all naturopathic physicians, Dr. Robert Kochko. So we have some amazing like clinical hypnosis in there too. And he's also SE trained, which is somatic experiencing trained.
Yeah. I put it in the show notes, getanxietyproof.com.
Yes.
And then like, do you have a website?
Yes, MichelleShapiroRD.com. It's the same as my Instagram. It's just, and there's,
if you do nothing else, the Instagram is a must.
Go to the Instagram. I also have a membership now for people called Wellness Map, and Wellness Map is a monthly membership, $27 a month. And what you get basically is access to my list of all different kind of practitioners, which I'm going to put you on in all different realms that are all functional practitioners, and also access to functional lab testing at lower costs, access to free like chiropractic services, free acupuncture, free massage, a bunch of different stuff. So it's really just for people to like dip their toes into wellness without having to like dive head first and just feel out what functional medicine is really all about.
Oh, you're a gift. I could talk to you all day, but I have a patient in a minute.
I know. I'm like, oh my God, that was.
I know. Well, I even thought when I just put an hour for us, I was like, what a fool. But I'm trying to honor my need for excessive nourishment in all ways. And there will be I have to tell myself as we're talking, you can get more, Molly. That's how I healed my binging. There's always more. Do you really want it? So I say to one of my patients, I was like, you can order macaroons from Paris. They'll come to your house. You don't necessarily need to eat it right now. You can get ribs from Kansas City. You can access it.
100%. There's no, what do they say? Scarcity mindset in the business coaching world. I hate all the phrases they use, but I like to use them about them and be mean. Your scarcity mindset, people. Also, I literally will come back on for part 2 anytime, and then you're coming on my podcast too.
But also you don't understand me. Part 2, part 3, part 4,
you're not getting it. It's its own podcast, Michelle. Okay, you're not getting it. It was my joy and honor to spend time with you today, and I'm so freaking grateful that you had me on. Seriously, thank you.
All right, well, it's not goodbye. See you later.
Yeah, see you for episodes 25. Bye, everyone. Thanks for listening.